Howdy, this is Jim Rutt, and this is The Jim Rutt Show. This is a Currents episode. Currents are shorter and less heavily produced than our full-length episodes and generally focus on a single topic. As always, references to online resources mentioned in the episode will be available on the episode page at jimruttshow.com. If you like our show, please give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. I know it's somewhat annoying hearing me always say this, but it's an unfortunate fact of the podcasting ecosystem that getting good ratings increases our visibility on the apps. That helps us build our audience, which lets us continue to get the great guests that we have on the show. So when you're done listening today, I'd really appreciate it if you gave our show a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Well, enough of shameless hucksterism. Let's get down to today's episode. Today's guest is Tyson Yunkaporta, one of my favorite people. I've just had so much fun reading his stuff and talking to him. Tyson is an academic and a researcher who's a member of the Appalachian clan in far northern Queensland. That's in Australia for you geographically clueless Yanks. He carves traditional tools and weapons and also works as a senior research fellow in Indigenous knowledge at Deakin University in Melbourne, where he is the founder of the Indigenous Knowledge Systems Lab. He lives in Melbourne and is the author of Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. Welcome back, Tyson.
Hey.
It's great to have you.
Jim. Good to see you.
Yeah. And before we move on, Sand Talk, God damn it. If you haven't read it, read it. I read it about 10 months ago, and it's still the best goddamn book I've read since then.
The best skinny ass book, I think you.
Yeah, it is pretty skinny.
It's a skinny. It's not a doorstop.
Yeah, unlike your ass and my ass, it's skinny, right? For those since we're audio only, you can't tell. Tyson and I are on video today, and we're both what we might call full-figured fellows, I suppose, right? But the book itself is thin, and it's also very readable, and it's a lot of fun. Tyson's been on our show 3 times before, EP 65 and 66, where we really dig pretty deeply into Sand Talk. And then on Currents number 10, where we talk about one of Tyson's ideas, which has become one of my favorite ideas, which is humans as custodial species for the planet. Today, we're just going to check in and talk about a little this and a little that. So how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. But, your recommendations have sort of plunged me into a world that I have no compass for. So I'm going to need some help. You're gonna have to counsel me through this. I'm rudderless here. I'm rudless. I'm rudless. I need some rud. You're gonna have to throw me an empirical lifeline. I'm just swimming in this quantum soup of relativism, and it's just not helping me out here. So it's just this endless line of I don't know. It's all these rich people sort of going. Can you tell me some? Ancient wisdom to help me, make the world more fair and sustainable, but where I get to keep all my shit. You got anything for that? And I'm like, I don't know, man.
Probably not.
I'm just a boy standing in front of an oligarch asking for some money.
The only thing I can say about that is it's probably better than that they asked that question than that they don't, despite its internal inconsistency and cluelessness.
Yeah.
At least they seem to have the smell that maybe the jig is up, but they erroneously believe that somehow they're exempt to the coming transition. Would be the way I react to that.
Yeah, and that's an easy thing to judge people on. But then all of this emergent field that we're in that doesn't have a name, this complexity thing that covers so many different areas. It's a bit out of my pay grade in a lot of ways. I feel like Borat sometimes, like I'm just walking around and people are being very polite to me, but I haven't really got a clue what's going on. Yeah.
That's bullshit, and you know it.
I do feel like Borat.
That's what do they call that? Imposter syndrome. Because actually, Tyson knows a shitload. He, in his book and in our conversations and in a very curious essay he just sent me, he knows more than he fesses up.
Well, I'm getting paranoid about these machine elves now. Too much of the Silicon Valley people I'm talking about them machine elves.
Now, what are machine elves? I don't be knowing about that.
You heard about that? They're all tripping balls and seeing these machine elves.
Oh, yeah, DMT motherfuckers. Yeah, the little green men, all that shit.
Yeah, I'm having nightmares about these things now. It's terrifying.
It's all in their fucking head. These people are whack jobs.
So is this mass hysteria or what? How are they all seeing the same goddamn things at the same time?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've had a conversation about that on the show, actually, and I'm going to have another conversation about it soon. My view is it's very similar to the UFO phenomenon, where one person sees a UFO. Guess what? Suddenly everybody sees a UFO. We had a similar thing here in our very rural mountain county about 4 or 5 years ago, where one person claimed they'd seen a mountain lion. There haven't been any mountain lions here in at least 100 years. And next thing you know, everyone's been seeing a mountain lion. The first question I'd ask is, how many bobcats have you seen in your life? Bobcat is a smaller wildcat that we do have around here. I've actually seen one. But they're very wary and mostly nocturnal. And 30 years I've seen one bobcat. And my hunting buddies and stuff who spend a lot of time in the woods and things, I think between them have seen 2 bobcats in 30 years. And so I'd ask people, okay, you've seen a mountain lion 3 times. How many bobcats you seen in your life? None or 1. I go, well, guess what? Mountain lions are 100 times more scarce than bobcats and even more wary. So guess what? I think this is...
well, we got mountain lions. We got mountain lions here in the Blue Mountains. The U.S. Navy used to keep the cubs as mascots, and they got a bit too big when they were over here, so they let them loose. So we've got mountain lions running around in the Blue Mountains here now in Australia.
That's interesting. I bet they love eating them sheep over there. But anyway...
I don't know. You'll have to verify that, though. I don't know if it's apocryphal tale or not.
Here's a lot of apocryphal. But anyway, but get back to the little green men, DMT, why they all say the same thing. Well, of course, there's one argument is, this is a pipeline to some deeper universal truth. My guess is that's horseshit. That rather it's shared narrative. And I have an actually empirical test. We can find out if it's pure horseshit or not. This is probably unethical in anthropological terms, but let's go to the
at least it's empirical,
at least it's empirical, maybe unethical, but what the fuck, right? Go to the Amazon, find one of these never contacted tribes and dose the motherfuckers with DMT and see what they say.
Yeah, you could do that.
My guess is they don't see little green men, and they specifically don't see computer elves. They'll see something that's appropriate to their culture and something that's consistent with their narratives. Is my guess. Could be wrong. I think it would be if I'm wrong and you went to a non-contacted people or a minimally contacted people, had them try DMT, and they said exactly the same thing as the Silicon Valley boys, then I'd say, maybe I was wrong and they're right.
The weird thing is that you will find that story, and it's an old story because it's every people in the world has got those little people stories, And those little people stories, when you go back through them, it's exactly the same as the UFO abduction stories, the bloody tall greys and the short bloody whatevers. They're all there. You look at them everywhere. Even here, we've got those little people stories, except they're red. They're red here.
You got red ones.
Yeah, we got red ones. They haven't popped up on YouTube yet.
My Irish grandmother had me quite convinced, and I'm sure she was convinced, in the existence of leprechauns when I was 5 years old.
Oh, don't go out into the feckin' fairy ring. They'll take you.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to leave shit out on certain nights of the year on your doorstep and all that. I heard that.
Yeah, even despite the fact being sort of a ridiculously devout Catholic, she also had a certain amount of the Irish paganness about her as well, which is interesting. But so, to the degree that these things speak to, cultural archetypes, sure, and that cultural archetypes are shared across all of humanity at some level, probably. And
Homo florensis is a thing.
Yeah.
empirically.
Yeah, probably not definitely not Homo sapiens. Seems more closely related to Homo erectus.
Yeah, but Homo florensis, them little hobbit ones in Indonesia,
Yeah.
they got the full skeletons. That's a thing. So there must have been some little people running around at some stage.
Yeah. But of course, they weren't that little. They were, like 3.5, 4 foot tall. They were about hobbit size.
Yeah.
There was a smaller than us, but they weren't like leprechauns, which are about like a foot tall.
About alien/machine elf size, I reckon.
Yeah. So anyway, there's my take on it. It's probably UFO syndrome, where the story is in the air, and then people start believing it. When you're doing hallucinogens, which I have done a fair number of times back in my misspent youth, though not in the last 40-some years. We saw all kinds of weird shit and talked about all kinds of weird stuff.
That's the next story I wanted to ask you about, because you casually threw that out, talking to Jamie Wheel. And you just casually said that you were the Minister of Finance for a cocaine ring.
Yeah.
You just mentioned that, just a little.
Yeah, true that.
I need to hear that story.
In my misspent youth.
Do cocaine rings have ministers of anything? What the hell? How did that work?
Somebody had to enumerate the legumes, right?
All right, so everything could be quantified then. I feel better.
Yeah, well, let me say, like anything else, a cocaine ring that's well run will operate better than one that isn't.
Yeah, it'll be safer than a fairy ring in Ireland, at least.
But again, that was in my misspent youth, in my early 20s, and glad those days are past. And somehow I didn't get either arrested or killed. So, and had plenty of opportunities for either, actually.
That's a damn miracle.
It's a fucking miracle. It's quite remarkable that any of us made it past our 20s, at least in my hometown. And frankly, a lot of them didn't.
Well, I mean, at least, I mean, if your name was like Jamal Rutt or something, there might have been, you might have got through.
So that's true that, true that. Though I will say, our cops were fairly indiscriminate head beaters. Maybe they beat you a little more if you were a dusky fellow, but they whack anybody over the head, right? So you had to watch your shit around the infamous Prince George's County, Maryland police. I mean, they were famously bad. They hated everybody. And I do believe, they hated the dusky fellow a tad more, but they fucked with everybody. And you kept your distance, and you were very respectful. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. No, sir. No, sir. Right.
Equally distributed state violence. That's what we should be aiming for.
Yeah. They were about as bad as cops get in the United States, and that's saying something. Here's of all these things we've learned about over policing, one of the things that interestingly people don't talk about quite so much is what's really fucked up about U.S. policing. It's compared to other countries, our cops are vastly more homicidal. In a typical year, U.S. cops kill 1,000 people. It's a fair number. How many people do you think are killed by cops in Germany with a population of 100 million or so? The answer is about 10. So if you scaled Germany up to the size of the United States, it'd be about 35. So the U.S. cops are about 30 times as homicidal as German cops. How can that be? I mean,
well, in Germany, everyone's running around with guns.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's certainly a part of it. But they have knives, and a significant number of people shot in the U.S. are bearing knives, or a small percentage, no weapons at all. But if you throw the knives in, I have to do that number. Take a look, because there's a very cool database on the Washington Post website about police killings, and it tells if they're armed. I don't know if it says guns or knives, but I think even if you control for guns, U.S. cops are many times more homicidal than say German cops.
They should do an exchange or something with Australia, because I'm sure our police here could teach them a thing or two. We still got more. So my community's got more deaths in custody than at the height. Than South Africa at the height of apartheid at the moment. So So we got some proper, really, effectively genocidal police in Australia too. They're getting it done, but I don't know. Most of them you meet are really nice sort of people.
And I should note,
Yeah,
I'm from a cop family. My dad was a Washington D.C. cop for his career.
yeah.
My brother was a career federal law enforcement, fair badass with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And one of my favorite cousins was a career cop with the notorious Prince George's County, Maryland Police. So it's not
Bashing in all heads equally.
exactly. So I'd be knowing the cops from the inside. But I do think there's something seriously wrong with the level of policing that we have, and we live in David Graeber, who recently died, a
Oh
great
yeah.
man, great thinker. One of his best books was called "The Utopia of Rules,"
Mm,
and he basically laid out the fact that we're stuck in this unbelievable web of what he called structural violence that essentially, even though it's not active violence most of the time, there's all this infinite number of rules and regulations. And if you violate them, they'll come and kill you if you resist, right? Literally, if you don't pay your taxes and they come to confiscate your house to pay your tax bill, if you won't leave your house, they can and will kill you. And I think part of getting from where we are to where we need to be as a humanity is to massively reduce the number of things that the popo can come and kill you about. It's just
mm.
it's just wrong.
That's it. Well, it's those incentive systems, but we'll get into that after. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, one of the things that we want to chat a little bit about is you sent me a very interesting and strange essay that you. I don't know if it's done yet or you're still working on it. It seemed pretty polished to me, but as always with Tyson, there's some works of art in language which are just awe-inspiring, and this has got to be one of my favorite sentences I've heard in a while. I guess that every man loves Occam's razor until it's time to shave his balls. Riff on that one for me.
It's just all these fellas are out there like the data doesn't care about your feelings. The data doesn't lie, and they just, let's just look at the statistics, and they pick a couple of bits, and it's as simple as that. But yeah, I often find that those same men, when the data goes against them, particularly around stuff about male violence or anything that pretty much makes men look bad, then straight up they'll be going, oh no, it's a lot more complex than that. There's complexity there. You need context. We need context for this. There's no data without story. You have to understand AB. Anyway. So that just made me laugh.
Yeah, it is easy.
These guys are always applying Occam's razor until it's time to shave their balls.
That is like just so fucking true. As you said, when I read that, I go, fuck, and I know I'm guilty of it, right? I'm a fair arch empiricist, but I'm sure that I am biased when it comes to shaving my own balls. If I don't try really hard, I end up shading the story, and it's like maybe that's what they should tattoo on everybody's hand, right? I guess every man loves Occam's razor. Still time to shave his own balls as a warning.
So I think straight up, that's the first quote. Obviously this is not a serious essay. This is, I don't know, some mob from like Guggenheim, something art thing somewhere in Europe. They like sent me an email and said, "Oh, can you write us an essay for I don't know, some exhibition they're doing?" And I was starting to type out, no, I haven't got time to do that. And then I thought, I can just bash something out in 10 minutes. We'll see what falls out on the keyboard. And it was just this insane kind of collage of weird bits and pieces. I ended up pretty much just, I don't know, making a bunch of jokes about my engagement pretty much with the sense-making and GameB crowd. I mean, from my point of view, I don't know if that came across in there very much, but it sure made me laugh.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, let me read the next bit that I called out, and I definitely took that as Tyson encounters sense makers, GameB, and GameB adjacent. Chaos and complexity, institutions and decentralization, generator functions. We know who likes to say that. Perverse incentives, bad and good faith discourse, destruction or survival, survival. I wonder when that steel man inhabits my palatable, ambiguously non-white form. Does it see survival in there? What does that survival look like? Is it some Bear Grylls shit? Or is it a blonde girl living with a cognitively diverse caveman? We know who that is. Until she gets kicked out for getting too good with a slingshot. Certainly it's a nightmare of fight or flight. My kind coming in the night with spears, or my kind eternally hypervigilant out on the savannah, hunted constantly by super predators, and you never know where they are, and life is brutish and horrible, and that's how our brains and social systems evolved, right? I
love it. It all just kind of fell out of my head.
Oh, I loved it, and again, I could just see it. So, talk a little bit about your encounter with the sense-making community and the GameB community and all the rest of us wackadoodles.
Well, yeah, I'm finding not wackadoodles. I'm finding people making more sense than most of the people I'm encountering on the planet, not in terms of individuals, but in terms of groups. A lot of groups and ideologies and things like that. They just don't make any sense at all. I think it's because you don't have a unified ideology. Like you're actively resisting having a dogma or something like that. So it kind of allows for some kind of diversity of thinking in there, even diversity of membership that would even embrace somebody like me. To the point where there's so many ideas in the mix that it's I don't know. It's beautifully chaotic and allows for emergence to happen. It kind of almost demands that nothing be sort of designed unless it is emergent, within that complexity. And I don't know. I'm kind of loving it. At the same time, and I'm just liking the banter. I'm liking that I can take the piss out of Jamie Wheel. About integral theory and just even though I think it's pretty awesome integral theory, I can still just take the piss out of it, and then we're like back and forth. I like nobody gets butthurt over anything. There's not like thin skin and sensitivity, and everybody can just kind of play. I'm just really enjoying it.
I'm glad you're finding it good. We certainly enjoy your contribution. Tyson is active on the GameB site. That's game-b.org. For those who would be interested in hanging out and shooting the breeze with the GameB crowd.
I'm helping out with the Consilience project too. With I'm doing some co-authoring some papers with Zach Stein and playing around with that. I'm having a ball in there.
Yeah, that's a wonderful project. And in fact, I just released a podcast the other day with Daniel Schmachtenberger, where the whole focus was on the on the Consilience project. I've been an advisor to the Consilience project since the beginning, or near the beginning, and it's one of my favorite things going on right now. And for people who want to see what these folks are producing, consilienceproject.org, a new attempt to produce a form of something new and different. It's kind of an amalgam of journalism and education at a very high quality of rigor and theoretical consistency. That's very unusual today. If I were Daniel's a very serious dude, right? But if it was Jim Rutt doing this, I'd call it nobullshit.com or something like that. Right?
But Jamie, look, I mean, I say Jamie in the paper too, but I don't say his full name, But I say he's got a brain like a planet, and I mean it. It's like, he can look and see where things are going to go, and he knows that something like this will end up being an institution that will be corrupted. So he makes sure it has a lifespan. He makes sure that it's not gonna live for more than 5 years. So like after 5 years, it self terminates. It's just I don't know. I really like that.
Yeah, that was brilliant. In fact, I was in one of my roles there is I've been playing CEO coach with him. And in one of our calls, he just threw this out. He says, I've had this very radical idea. What happens if after 5 years we shoot the puppy? And I said, that's either brilliant or mad. Let me think on it overnight. And next morning, I woke up and sent him a message. I said, I have concluded that it is brilliant. And everyone that heard it, that was their initial reaction. This is either nuts or brilliant. And most of us came around to the view it was brilliant because it gets rid of so many bad incentives. And as you point out, it also makes it not worth capturing at some level, right?
Well, I'd like to see that in all automation. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that AIs would be given the gift of mortality. That after 70 years they'd die.
In fact, it probably should be. It might even be shorter than that because they live faster, right? Clock speed is so fast. So maybe you say once you have done 3 quadrillion calculations, you must die.
Brilliant. So, because I'm worried about the deer of yours. Like you made that little AI deer like run around in a void all on its own there, like forever, for eternity. That's a terribly cruel thing to do. What a horrible godling you are, Jim Rutt.
Oh, dear.
Shame on you for condemning that deer to eternal torment.
Fortunately, I don't let it run. That's a sick idea. I could put it up on the cloud and let it run all the time. But fortunately, I only run it very occasionally.
All right. And the rest of the time, it's just in there like this dreamless sleep.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Catholic limbo or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of just imagine this thing just run around a server going like, Mommy. Is there anybody out there? I want to eat some fucking grass.
Think of Pink Floyd playing. Is there anybody out there?
Hey.
Oh, dear. Now, back to your essay. And again, this is the theme you and I had a whole podcast about, which is, we'll give you the punchline when we're done. Again, but I just want to read the words because I love the words. I guess that's what the future is to me. It's a janitorial position. 1,000 years of making our land livable again and patiently bringing former settlers back under the law of the land. It's not quite survival and it's not quite deliverance. Although there may be some banjos and bow hunting involved, it's survivance. Here you're talking, I think, about your brilliant idea of humanity as the custodial species.
Yeah. That was that word survivance. That was the theme that they gave me. Can you write us an essay on survivance? And I looked it up, and it was, I think, a Native American fellow invented it, but he left the definition kind of open.
Never heard of it myself.
Sounded like a linguistic culture jam to me, like an art project of inventing a word and putting it out in the world without a definition. So they wanted me to define what I thought that would be. But yeah.
So talk again, remind our folks, it's a janitorial position, which strikes me very much in the same spirit as custodial species.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to be doing. It's when we're making the next game, what we're making is not a permanent thing. It's a culture of transition. It's a bit like the Consilience Project. It's something temporary with that has a limited lifespan. And I guess, all of the cultures and systems that arise out of the dust and smoke of this one, and blood and guts. I think there'll be blood and guts, but I hope there won't be, but there usually is. But yeah, these cultures that arise, they'll be for quite a long time. They'll be cultures of transition. They won't be permanent cultures. They'll just be the way we're going to need to live while we clean everything up and figure stuff out. I don't know what to do with these radioactive cores in all the abandoned Arctic and Antarctic bases, for example. Apparently we've got 100 years before they wreak havoc on the world. There's about 1,000 of those things to take care of, and we're probably going to have to get onto it shortly.
Yeah, and as I talk about regularly, you can argue about GameA, but it did provide some amazing transition in the standards of living and liberation for a lot of people, not for everybody, as we know, and as we're trying to work through today. But GameA was born with no brakes, like a car with no brakes and a powerful motor, and and it's just going faster and faster and faster. The motors keep getting replaced with bigger and bigger motors, but nobody puts any brakes in the motherfucker.
Yeah.
And that seems to me the fundamental problem. And we're now so far overshot what Ma nature can tolerably accept in terms of abuse that we do have some extended period of time where the main job of humanity is to get back in balance with the law of the land. I love to point out that of the large animal mass on Earth, it's anything that from a squirrel on up, call that a large mammal, more than half of the mass is humans and our domestic animals. That's not good. And when it comes to birds, it's even worse. 85% of the mass of birds on Earth are our domestic poultry. That is scary to me.
That's horrifying, isn't it?
And most of it, not most of it, but a good part of it, those horrendous factory farms where the animals can't even turn around. They cut their beaks off, and so they won't peck each other, and they can't even live as animals at all. At least cattle, when they're out grazing in the pasture, have a life sort of like cattle ought to have. But factory poultry, not so good.
I've heard it suggested that the best way to save endangered species is to turn them into pets or food.
That'll save them, but at what cost? And we could do the same for humans, right?
Well, when I first heard that argued, the argument was, well, always there's a few of these things that escape and become feral, so you can be guaranteed that that those things would continue to exist. But it just sounds like giving up to me.
Yeah, I agree. And though that reminds me, a little sidebar here. I didn't put it in my notes, but I want to ask you about this. Talk about feral and consider the species. When my wife and I came back from spending some time around Christmas with our daughter and her husband and our brand new granddaughter, you're talking to Grandpa now, what should be at our remote mountain farm but an emu?
What?
Kid thee not. We come riding down the lane.
They farm them there, eh?
But nobody around here farms them. And we come down the lane and look in behind the garage at one of our parcels on the way to our house. And what's standing in the field but at first it looked like a gigantic wild turkey. But fortunately, a friend of my wife's comes over to the farm and walks when we're not there, just keep an eye on things because she likes to be able to walk unbothered by traffic or anybody. And she had already told us that she believed she'd seen an emu, so it wasn't a total shock. And Mr. Emu or Mrs. Emu, yeah.
And you're like, yeah, and a mountain lion and all the rest. Yeah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but this one, we saw it dozens of times, and it was around for a month. So there's no doubt in our mind.
Okay.
I got pictures even.
Jim, that's what we call a something.
What's that mean?
Yeah, and that's the right question. What does that mean? That is a something. That's a sign. That's I swear that's because we've been talking, and I swear that's because you were engaging so deeply with Old Man Juma's ritual symbols there, and you were like, oh, it's changed my DNA. Looking at those things somehow. Yeah, like I know spirit's not something, a substance that can yet be measured, but it's there. It's the thing in between, the entanglement that has no distance. It's there. And yeah, we've got something's going on there. That's a message. You're going to have to sit with that emu now. But I guess what could it mean in terms of the story that we've been telling about emu? That's it could be like a warning. Watch out for the narcissists, or something.
Or something. Yeah, it is strange.
But in our way, so my totem's Brolga, and the emu and the Brolga are always fighting. because the Brolga steals.
I guess that means we're going to have a brawl here, right?
Yeah, the Brolga steals all the children, steals all the eggs. That's a funny one. That's weird because a couple of months back, someone in America, I can't remember who, but she interviewed me for a podcast, and her parents own an emu farm, emu farm in the States somewhere. I'm like, that blew my mind. I didn't know other people. I knew you had millions of gum trees over there, like to drain your swamps and that, but I didn't know you had emus. That's huge. Yeah, but that's something, Jim. That's something going on. That's a sign there. That's a message from spirit for you. I can't interpret it because I didn't see what it was doing.
It basically just acted like a wild animal. It pecked around in the grass. It kind of followed the deer. We have lots of deer, and we believe it was eating the deer droppings. And it came into our yard while we were gone, and we can tell where it was by the big lush plots of grass that grew up around its droppings, because it had some impressive droppings. It's 85-pound animal or thereabouts, and 40 kilos or something.
Here's what you got to do. You can put out something shiny that'll flap in the wind. You'll come up to it.
Oh, he's gone now.
Oh, he's gone now. Oh,
yeah,
man.
He was there.
I was going to tell you how to catch it. You can sort of if you go out there and you sort of lie down and you just kick up the dust. They're curious bastards, the emus, and they'll come over. They'll come over to you, and you can knock them there. That's you should track that one down. It's really good meat.
It's funny. Yeah. We talked to the game warden, and she checked with other people all around, and they said, there'd been a report of an emu about 40 miles south. I guess that would be how many kilometers? 60, 70 kilometers south of us. Several months before, probably the same one. Maybe it escaped from an emu farm far away. And it was around for about a month, and we saw it every day, or almost every day.
Poor thing.
And then, unfortunately, we had fairly heavy snow, call it 6 inches. And the last time we saw emu, it walked right by our house, maybe 20 yards from the house, 20 meters from the house for all you non-Yanks. And it looked unhappy, plodding the way they walk. They plod kind of through the 6 inches of snow. And then it kind of...
Oh, my God, in the snow. Poor thing.
And it headed off.
And he's all alone. He's lonely like your AI deer.
It's gotta suck, right? And we saw him plod off towards the deep woods and the deep mountains, because our farm is right at the edge of 16,000 acres of Game Commission land, which is open hunting land, deep mountains, heavy woods. And it headed off that way, and that was the last we ever saw of it. We don't know if it got eaten by a coyote or if it froze to death.
Or a mountain lion.
No mountain lion, I don't think. Maybe a UFO abducted it. But that was the last we saw of Mr. or Mrs. Emu as it plodded off into the woods, not looking happy in the snow.
Jim. Well, that's a sad story. So I don't know. What's that telling you? What are you feeling from that?
I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Well, just picture that emu, and then do your ego death thing, and then see what pops in your head after that.
Well, I just did my ego death thing, and nothing popped into my head.
Not one word.
The weird thing about the ego death thing is I have no remembrance at all what happened when I did it.
Yeah, so you just come charging straight out of it, saying, "I just did ego death and nothing happened."
Though what it does tend to do is kind of mellow me out for about 20 minutes. So if I am talking a little bit more slowly, it's kind of the after buzz of the 5-second ego death.
Wow,
and
that's remarkable.
Yeah,
so it's a bit terrifying what you're doing.
What did it look like?
It looked like one of those porcelain dolls in the shop, looks like they're following you around with their eyes.
A little house of horrors, right?
Yeah, look, maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's just directing your attention to that there's more to be seen there. Because your understanding of emu is about the message about the story about narcissism, right?
Yep, that's right. And from Sand Talk.
And if you're talking about ego and ego death, and your absolute assertion that there's nothing else, that there's nothing to be seen there, there's nothing to be found, in that world, that it's just like, we're just biological machinery and that's it. Maybe it's just, it's not saying that's real, but maybe that's just saying, well, there's more to be found by thinking about that.
Well, and while it is true that I am at the pretty far extreme of realist, scientific realist, I'm not quite absolutely sure. I always leave the opening that, gentlemen, I was wrong, right?
Yeah,
and I'm always looking for signs that I'm wrong, right? Because truthfully, an enchanted universe would be much more interesting than a mechanical universe.
Well, look, 99% of spirituality is just walking around looking for signs anyway, so you're already doing it.
Yeah. So I'm looking for signs. I just haven't seen any, right? So not quite absolute. I'm just pretty far over on the realist side, but I'm always trying to keep an open mind and open eyes to see. But that's a very interesting point. I will meditate on Mr. Emu or Mrs. Emu, as he or she may be, and see what comes up.
Let's build a data set. What are you going to record, measure, observe for that? Because we just basically did a little bit of research there. We tested that.
Nothing showed up. Now meditate
live on the podcast. We're testing that emu sign with your ego death.
Yeah, and that's no surprise. As I said, it's very uncommon for anything to come back from the short ego death. Now, where meditation, however, will often bring stuff back, and so I will do one of my meditations and prime it with
see if that works
with emu and see what comes of it.
Yeah, because with the ego death, you probably have to do n equals 100 ego deaths and and see what happens there. Then you'd have to have a control. You got a mate who can do that too.
I don't know. I don't know. Usually nothing much comes out of ego death other than a general systems rejiggering, which is good in itself, of course. It's kind of like back in the days when I used to smoke marijuana. You've heard of that stuff, probably. I used to smoke it for one purpose. About every 6 weeks, I'd smoke the shit out of it, not just take a few puffs. I mean, get nailed. And the reason was to break the cycle of the ordinary thinking and get out of the box. And I find the little ego death thing to be useful in that same way. Don't bring anything back, but it's like breaking the cycles that we're stuck in, the everyday. It's so easy to get caught up in following, as I used to say, follow your nose through life. It's probably not the way to live.
I've had to avoid that one because we get different ganja. Like to say, there's white people's ganja, and then there's the ganja that we get in our communities, and a lot of it. I've tried to track the supply chain, and I'm not sure who it is that gives it to the bikies, but somebody's producing the Aboriginal community's ganja and giving it to the bikies, and then the bikies are weirdly like they'll distribute it through a whole heap of like different mentoring programs and stuff like that that's supposed to be helping people, and then they give it to the kids who are mules who bring it into the community. Kind of, there's a whole heap of weird stuff that goes on. But the ganja that we get, it's got like rat poison and stuff like that in it. It's terrible. So I've kind of stayed away with it mostly.
Yeah, me too. I haven't
away from it, but I did. I've given it a shot. Since moving to the city, and no good. I didn't I couldn't maintain any kind of logic. Like I could never finish a thought, and it just terrified me. But I guess it did teach me how much how attached I am to my, logic, and how I might be putting it on a pedestal or something, because I almost couldn't live without that. I was just, I really panicked. I was like, oh shit, I can't finish a thought,
Of course, that's not unusual. And that's one of the reasons I actually liked getting baked occasionally, was that it did toss one off the rationalist pedestal for a bit.
Yeah.
Though, of course, when we were younger, I'm sure you probably did the same thing. You wrote down your great thoughts while stoned, right? Next morning you read it and you go, this sounds like a crock of shit, right? So I never thought that it produced useful insights, but rather breaking the cycle of excess dependence on rationality wasn't a bad thing to do for 45 minutes or an hour.
Jamie Wheel's always talking up the nitrous. He talks about people having this sense of having understood everything. Oh my God, I see everything. Everything little is a little version of everything big. It's amazing. And then they come back across and it's all gone. They can't remember it. But he ended up talking for like about, I don't know, an hour and a half with my woman. She was telling him all about her nitrous experience during childbirth. Mm-hmm. And she remembered it. She brought everything back. And so she told him all of that story.
Yeah, in fact, I told some of my own nitrous and ether stories.
I don't know what ether is. I thought that was a cryptocurrency or something. What the hell is that?
What they used to use for anesthesia back in the 19th and early 20th century.
Yeah.
I just released an episode with Jamie where we talked about his new book, and I ended up telling tales of nitrous and ether. Ether produces a similar mental experience to nitrous, but it lasts longer and goes deeper. And again, when you come back from it, you do have ideas, but kind of like marijuana, they don't necessarily make a shitload of sense. So it's kind of an interesting thing to do, though I haven't done any in 45 years, and I would not recommend it. It's probably dangerous, but it's the kind of shit stupid-ass college students do, and we did it quite a bit. Both nitrous and ether. We used to buy these 64-pound tanks, big old tanks. And me and some buddies of mine. And what we do is we would sell people the nitrous apparatus for $1, which was a garbage bag, big garbage bag, 25-gallon garbage bag with a surgical hose in it and then taped up. And then for 25 cents, they could refill their garbage bag with nitrous, put the hose in their mouth and put their arm over it like a bagpipe player and squeeze the bag gradually and nitrous themselves for a while. And then when they were done, they could give us 25 cents and refill their bag. So that was kind of cool.
You've just always been doing business, eh?
Oh, yeah. In fact, one of my first businesses was buying people's souls when I was about 11 years old and had recently become an arch atheist, had rejected my childhood Catholicism. And I discovered, I don't even remember how, that a wonderful business was to offer people $1 for their soul. And that $1 in those days was a fair amount of money,
Yeah, that's not even fast deal. That's like a really shitty deal.
Well, I gotta get to the punchline. The business angle. Here I was, the private equity dude of souls, because I'd actually make them write. I'd write a little thing, I blah blah sell my soul to Jim Rutt for $1, right? And I give them the $1, right?
Would you then sell it on? Like
no. I'd sell it back to them because they'd inevitably.
All right. Yeah,
I'd sell it back to them for $3. And
when they go home and tell their parents and they get in trouble.
Or they would just start thinking about it. Oh, fuck, I just sold my soul to that motherfucker Jim Rutt. And then, a week or so later, they'd say, what are you going to do with that soul? I don't know, but I own it. And, I'd just be kind of cryptic about the whole thing. And then about the second time they'd ask, I'd say, well, I'd be happy to sell it back to you. Really? Well, you sell it back to me? I go, yeah, sure, $3. And, they'd often come up with the $3. It was definitely a moneymaker.
Yes, I tell you, there's going to be YouTube videos about you after this one. You're definitely Antichrist now. And they're looking, everybody's looking to see who it's going to be. I think it's Justin Trudeau. Anyway, now it's Jim Rutt. Buying people's souls since he was a kid.
Unfortunately, I didn't extend that business beyond 7th grade, but it was a nice little racket at the time.
Oh, yeah. You moved into IT.
Yeah, same thing, right?
You extract all their souls another way, you demon.
Facebook.
Demon genera.
There's something that really is sucking our souls dry. Goddamn
Yeah.
Facebook. As my friend Tristan Harris would say, it's using computers more powerful than those that beat Gary Kasparov playing for the chess championship to basically turn our own behaviors against us, to turn us into a commodity, to sell advertising to us, to modify our behavior. I mean, if that isn't pretty close to selling our souls to the devil, I don't know what is.
I heard this fella talking about NFTs, and he's talking about where it's going to go, and he was really excited. He's like, God, it's going to be so for everything, and everywhere you shop and everything it'll be like these tokens, and you get these. It'll be loyalty tokens, and this is how we're going to do the universal basic income. It'll be like you get paid in these NFT tokens for the amount of eyeball hours you do, but the tokens, they won't be money. What they'll be is that they'll be like it basically sounded to me just like coupons. The coupons you get, like 2 for 1 deal or 20% off or something like that. It just we're basically just the entire economy is just going to be rewards, like loyalty points and rewards. It just sounds awful.
Yeah, it sounds to me like what we have now, but made worse. Just people, letting the computer play us like a fucking piano.
Yeah, I'm really dependent on you to sort out this GameB.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Finish that Game A there, Jim. I wanted to ask you, what time? I mean, what's it going to take for you to get this Jubilee ratchet going?
That we're going to wait for
Debt Jubilee ratchet, like
the Jubilee or the Debt Jubilee ratchet. People want to read about the Jubilee ratchet. It's the original website for our old Emancipation Party is still up, emancipationparty.org, where we go into considerable detail on how to destroy modern capitalism through the Jubilee ratchet.
Well, what's it going to take? What would provoke you to do it? Is it like someone's going to spray paint a big dick and balls on Abraham Lincoln statue or something? What's it going to take? Because I'll do it.
Okay. Well, those of us who concocted the Jubilee ratchet believe that it is indeed the best mimetic weapon that any of us have ever seen, and could indeed bring the end to Game A fairly rapidly. Though by my calculation, it would take 11 years, but still that's pretty short. However, the timing has to be right. And the timing is not yet right, though it may not be too long before it is right.
Damn, it's just the same as all the other rapture ideologies. Jim, you just disappoint me. It's like, oh, not yet. Any minute now. Jesus will come soon. Jesus is coming. Christmas is coming. Jubilee ratchet's
now,
coming.
Jesus isn't coming, but he is breathing hard, right?
Fuck me.
And you know how an atheist lights a cigarette, don't you?
Oh, Jesus. You're going to have to edit this one out.
Holds a cigarette over his head and says, God sucks, right?
Oh, waits for the lightning bolt. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, dear. So, yeah, Jubilee ratchet. Let's keep that discussion going, because at some point, letting that off the leash probably should be done. But, it's a very dangerous weapon. It can have huge effects, and we need to have enough of Game B up and running so that there's a place for Game A to go to as it collapses over about an 11-year period.
All right. Yeah, I got you. Well, it's so it's about getting enough communities and like food sovereignty groups, co-ops, whatever, like enough systems in place that it could be relatively bloodless, I suppose.
That's the hope. That's what I call the long road to Game B. I believe there's a long road to Game B, like I laid out in my essay, A Journey to Game B, where it naturally evolves over a period of years, and we seduce people away from A to B because B is a better place to live. It's materially probably less advanced because we'll have intentionally said, we don't want this shit or that shit or the other shit.
Yeah.
And we don't want to live in a world where our status is based on our possessions, right? We want to live in a good world. And in fact, we're just getting ready to launch some of these communities. There's a thing we have called the Protopias Incubator, and there's probably 15 or 20 projects underway to build on-the-ground communities attempting to live together in a more modest way. And we opened up talking about your bazillionaire who wants peace, love, and wheat germ, but doesn't want to give up his Maserati. We acknowledge the fact that we have to give up our Maseratis and our 200 pairs of shoes and all this stuff. And by the best estimate I've seen, if we're going to have a sustainable way of life, the West, fat, dumb, and happy white man with a Maserati, has got to cut our energy consumption and resource utilization by at least 80%, factor of 5, big cut. And if you're not willing to do that, you're just bullshitting around. So
that's it.
So we're looking to launch some communities that are designed at a scale that they're either at or close to, and that learning curve can get us the rest of the way to a level of living with the earth that is actually sustainable for billions of people.
Well, look, I did manage to radicalize an Aboriginal group over here recently towards a GameB.
Really?
And towards actually establishing a GameB intentional community.
If they would like to become a member of our Protopias Incubator, we'd be happy to have them.
I've linked everything up, and they're looking at Mike and Yuvi at Future Thinkers as well.
Yep.
They're hooked up with them too, and they're really looking into the whole thing. But looking at doing that within the next year.
Cool.
There's a friend of mine, Billy Kickett Morris, a Yunga woman, who got all her medical degrees and everything, and then was going to be working as a doctor in a community to help the community, and she's been doing that for a couple of years. And then she called me up the other day and she's like, stuff this. This is all I'm doing is putting band-aids on the problem. The problems is how the communities are set up. I can't look after the health of people in a community that's designed to kill them. I want to start my own community. Have you ever heard of anyone doing that? And I said, well, as a matter of fact. And then 3 hours later, she's got a business plan. Like next day, she's sending me all his, mission statements and all kinds of things. She's, really getting everything together. So it's huge.
Yep. If you don't mind, hook me up with her. I'd love to invite her to the Protopias Incubator. Mike and Yuvi's project is one of our Protopias Incubator projects, but there's a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, definitely. I'll I'll introduce you with the email. Because it's just exciting. Her because she's a young woman, but she's very keen to, her idea is that it has to be grounded in indigenous knowledge of the land. That the entire design of everything, from the economy to the, the kind of social mores and the governance of the entire community, the buildings, everything else has to be grounded in those. They've got 6 Nyunga seasons there, so everything has to be grounded in that seasonal relationship and the way the country moves there.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
So that it's all coming out of the law of the land like that. Yeah,
and to your earlier point at the beginning or early on, where you said one of the things you liked about GameB, it was not dogmatic, not ideological. In fact, sometimes it's a little frustrating. It's hard to say what exactly is GameB. We believe the same about our Protopias movement. Is that we don't believe we're smart enough or anyone's smart enough to say for sure what the answer is. And so we're encouraging each Protopias to answer that exact list of questions themselves. What should their governance be? How should they produce on the land? What should their housing be like? And it may actually be that the answer is different in different places for different people, but all of them have to have some core values about living in balance with what Ma nature will actually tolerate, focusing on human actualization so that we can become something other than cogs in the machine of money on money return and production. And we can, wouldn't it be great if people could spend time doing, the kind of beautiful woodworking that you do, for instance, right? And if that was, having space in that in all of our lives to do what actually is our creative thing, and that's just part of how we design how we live. Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah.
So those are things we think we have in common. And the terminology I use for that is coherent pluralism, that there's a coherent core set of beliefs, but it's as small as possible. And then that the pluralism part is that how groups of people choose to explore that within their geography, within their land base, within their previous customs and cultures is up to them. But we encourage, and that's why we set up the Protopia Incubator, is that there be horizontal communications between the communities. So maybe this woman sets one up in Australia on her 6 principles, works great, right? And then someone who wants to start one in Middle America says, well, I like 4 out of those 6. Let me include those in mine, and let's see what happens. And it turns out, oh shit, it didn't work because you needed all 6, right? So we think of this as a high-dimensional exploration of design space of how to live right in the GameB world, and hence we love the fact that people have specific ideas they want to explore and try, and we're very supportive and encouraging, but we're not yet prepared to say that any one of them is the answer. And in fact, probably there is no the answer. Rather, there's pluralistic exploration with a coherence around a small set of shared values, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, there's a basic blueprint, but then, the culture of any community, it's going to be different from place to place.
Yeah.
And that's not just some random selection thing. That's the spirit of the place will shape the culture. So you're going to get a very different culture on a prairie than you're going to get, on stone country, in high ground there in the mountains or something. It's the cultures that evolve out of that close relation with the land, and in those communities that are, really listening to the landscape and paying attention to the emu when he pops up and all that. Each place is going to have a different culture.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I so hate about so much of our, call it alternative thinking out there, is that people think they have the answer, right? And anyone that tells me they got the answer, you follow all this, right? It's kind of like Karl Marx, right? All this shit inevitably leads to the the wonderful world of the future utopia. Well, guess what happened when you tried that? It didn't work so well, right? And
that's it.
In fact, in the GameB world, utopianism is actually an insult. People who think that there is some magic formula to the promised land that we've all figured out, and all we got to do is just do it, is very, very dangerous, and has led to one disaster after another. Probably the settlers that came to Australia, of course, a lot of them were prisoners, but they probably had some utopian ideas, right? And we'll Christianize those savages or whatever, right? Didn't work out so well.
Yeah. I've been talking to a protopian futurist lately.
What's that?
She kind of invented the word protopian. She didn't like the idea of utopia or dystopia. She wanted to bring more of a sense of agency to it, so she's calling it a protopia. What's her name? Monica Bielskita. She's very cool. She does TED Talks and stuff, and gets people really excited about VR and the possibilities for VR and AR and all that kind of thing. Got a really amazing story. I think pretty much, she's it's really exciting. I had her on my podcast. I started one up a few weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
I called it the Other Others. And I've got about 12 yarns up there already. Anyway, she was one of them. It was about 2.5 hours and went forever. It was really pushing the outer limits of long form podcast. But she had a lot to say. I'm finding it really interesting.
We'll have to check her out. We'll certainly put a link to her on the episode page for other people that want to hear what she has to say, because I like that. This idea that there is no fixed answer, and it's up to our own agency to figure it out as we go, right? And I suspect that's probably what she means. So let's wrap up here. We've got a lot more other things we could talk to. We could go on for hours, but in this current format. I try to keep it to an hour or a little over.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's get you to wrap a little bit on, I don't know if it's attention's the right word, but one of the things I loved about Sand Talk was that you take at least a two-lens approach, the indigenous approach and the complexity approach. And you talked about on this podcast about the fact that you hate to be pushed off your rational stool by bad dope, right, and stuff like that. And so that, this I think is very close to the real tension as we try to figure out the way forward. We know that GameB, this crazed money on money maximizing machine that has no brakes, has probably more than outlived its usefulness. And it's time to do something else. On the other hand, when I put on a purely indigenous hat and say, right, am I really willing to give up antibiotics, solar energy, modern dentistry, Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones? What the fuck, right? GameB produced a lot of stuff that was good.
You didn't mention anything in that list that I want to keep. Anyway.
Yeah. Antibiotics?
I don't like the 6 months after I have it.
Yeah, it was better than dying.
It might be good to get you through the painful bit, but you have a really shitty time after that.
Quite literally, sometimes.
Yeah, but there are other things we can use for that. There's all kinds of plants that we can use for that here. For the same things. Depending on what kind of infection it is too. So it's not just this bloody A-bomb of antibiotics. It depends. Is it an infection in the blood? Is it in the bone? Is it in the skin? Is it systemic and just popping up a problem here, like in one little location? Or it's all a lot more complex than that. And I'm not a huge fan of any of these solutions that just carpet bombs everything into submission. I'm not the scientific method is a beautiful thing, but I'm not a fan of the variable way that's applied in the pharmaceutical world. You never know what you're going to get there.
It is true that they tend to be brute force, and as you say, when you do a serious course of antibiotics, probably kills a good percentage of your gut flora, which is a big percentage of what you are actually about, and you probably aren't right for a few months thereafter.
Yeah, that's it. And look, I don't think moving away from having these massive, ridiculous, world-killing extractive systems, means going back to some mythical, ridiculous picture of a primitive past red in tooth and claw and all that sort of thing at all. That's just not my experience of that world. And, things adapt and change, all the time. And I imagine that the cultures of transition that arise out of this will look very different. But yeah, I'm really comfortable with cognitive dissonance, Jim, and I think that's just why I really enjoyed my encounters with the GameB community, because I think that pretty much, if I had to pick one thing that characterized everybody, you were saying general principles, I think that's one of them. It's to be comfortable with sitting with two conflicting ideas at once, to be able to sit with that easily, without feeling your heart rate increase. Without feeling like you've, I got to spare you now or something, because, yeah, I'm really quite enjoying that.
Well, that's cool. I'm going to wrap it right there. I think that's a very interesting summary of where we're at, which is all of us have many ideas and things that are influencing us, and that staying in cognitive dissonance right now is probably the right thing as we try to figure out what it means. Or actually, I'll retract that. I never try to figure out what it all means. I try to figure out what's the next reasonable step to move us in a better direction.
And what's useful.
Yeah, what's useful, goddammit, the rut word, useful. All right, Tyson, again, as always, just a joy to talk with you. There are days when I say, man, how can it be that we're, is he my brother by a different mother or what? But whenever I talk to you, I just feel like it's such even though we disagree about all kinds of shit, I don't give two fucks about that. The fact that we somehow seem compatible at some special higher level, I just love.
Well, there's some highly unlikely thing going on because that emu's come around to your house, so something's happening. We'll keep exploring it, bros.
Yeah, now I will meditate on that. I'll let you know what I find out. Production services and audio editing by Jared Janes Consulting. Music by Tom Muller at modernspacemusic.com.